left, 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 right. Left, 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 right. Left, left, mark time, march. Left, 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 right. Group, halt. Right, face. Post. The colors.
I wonder how many times they practice that.
Twice.
Ready? 2. Present. Arm. Order. Arm. Left. Face. Forward. March. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Right. Left. 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 Right.
I want to say thank you, first of all, for everybody who made this day possible, for coming, especially to all the veterans and student veterans who I get the honor and privilege of working with every day. I wanted to, before I pass this on to Dr. Dana to begin our ceremony, to lead with a quote. And it's a quote by Harry S. Truman. Our debt to the heroic men and valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. I'd like to add that UMaine will never forget their sacrifices. And I'd like to introduce to you the Vice President for Student Life, Dr. Robert Dana.
Thank you very much, Tony. This is a wonderful moment of reflection. It's an opportunity for us as a campus to come together and say thank you to the hundreds of University of Maine students who have perished in service to this country, and the thousands of UMaine students who have served and continue to serve this country in a way that reflects all that we consider good: selfless, engaged, loyal, honor. The values of the chosen few, those who serve, are integrity, giving, commitment, loyalty, and a belief that their service sets us all free. And I can tell you that knowing so many of our students, veterans today and over the last 30 years, they're some of the most remarkable, committed, and giving human beings one would ever hope to meet. So this is a moment for the University of Maine to step back and to look outside our bubble and to understand that what happens here is only possible because of those who serve. Without them, we're nothing as a society. This country could not flourish. So thank you to our veterans today, tomorrow, and forever. Thank you very much.
These guys are beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
For spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful
thank Tony for inviting me to speak today, and start with a couple thank yous. One to Tony, one to Tyler Emery, the president of the Veterans Club, and to the sort of unsung hero, Nori Jones. If you know anything about making the university a more veterans-friendly campus, you know that Nori is a big part of that. More, I want to thank everyone, especially the civilians, for coming today. Specifically, because if you know anything about war and homecoming, you know that scholars universally agree that the best thing to do for veterans are collective rituals of mourning and responsibility. So by coming today as civilians, I know you're all quick to thank us for our service. By coming today, you really help us come home and help us through that hard process of mourning and recovery. So thank you for coming and mourning and grieving for us today. The other thing that I want to say about today and commemorating fallen students is that it's about grieving their loss, but it's also celebrating some of our best, some of the finest of our generation, some people who continually inspire me to be a better person. And hopefully, by taking some time to speak from the heart about a couple of really exceptional students, focusing on the ones who have died in the war on terror, we can all be a little better people. We can all emulate them. War stories are, by themselves, terrible. And there's no way to tell this story without grief and loss and tragedy. But I think when you do the hard work of grief and tragedy, you get to the moral of the story. You get to the courage, the endurance, and the best that our generation of veterans and the veterans before us offer to our community. And it does more for us than simply remembering our fallen. I want to focus first on the life of James Zimmerman, a Marine lieutenant who died in Helmand Province of Afghanistan in 2010. He was a young man. He was 25 years old. And he was a platoon leader, a leader of Marines, in the most deadly campaign of the war on terror. Places like Mosul or Fallujah or Baghdad have taken the news a lot more. They've been more public. But Helmand, the seat of the enemy's logistical system, the place where heroin is grown and where they are subsisted, has always been the teeth of the fight. And because largely Marines and our allies have fought in Helmand, it doesn't get known. His unit took incredibly high casualties. When you read news reports, a Marine died there every day, every single day. And this 25-year-old man, who probably universally from a young age, wanted nothing but to serve his country, served with quiet, confident leadership until small arms fire took his life. In a helpless circumstance, in somewhat hopeless circumstance, where soldiers died every day, this 25-year-old man led, inspired, with quiet confidence, his Marines until he lost his life. There's the example that comes to mind in my life of this very impressive 25-year-old man was during the Iraqi troop surge, when I had the privilege of serving alongside the 126th Infantry. They took the highest casualty rates of any unit in the war on terror. And in a week, a company lost 2 Bradley fighting vehicles, actually in 4 days. The loss was so great and so similar to Helmand that a company first sergeant, somebody with 20 years of service on a raid objective, took his own life. I don't necessarily mean to call attention to this tragedy, to draw on the senselessness or the despair of that leader who's simply concerned about all the losses he suffered, but to draw out what was so great about Zimmerman, that this 25-year-old Marine, this officer with this young man, had the courage in these hopeless situation to lead until his death. He inspires me every day. He reminds me of officers that I had the privilege to lead, like Jared Grant, Captain Jared Grant, and First Lieutenant Rich Newton, who, within weeks of being platoon leaders, had their platoons decimated by IEDs. And they had the courage to continue leading in hopeless situations. They represent the best our university has to offer, the best of my generation of veterans, and they make me proud every day. They remind me of men like Jay Brainerd and Matthew Kutu, who died instantly. Kutu killed by a sniper. Jay Brainerd died of a helicopter crash. Kutu reminds me of the way that soldiers, every time they place their body armor on and walk out of the wire, 1 second can end their life. And the courage that all of our student veterans show every day, and the courage to put on your body armor knowing that that could happen. And the courage of aviators in Afghanistan who can die just because of the thin air, right? Just because it's harder to fly a helicopter in the mountains of Afghanistan than it is anywhere else. That true courage that Zimmerman showed, that Jay showed, that Matthew Kutu showed, to every day put their body armor on and inspire their men. They remind me of Nicholas Robertson, who, when you look at his academic record at the University of Maine, you would have never suspected him to be a Special Forces linguist in combat quickly after his graduation. An honors college graduate, the first award winner of the Resendiz ethics essay, would die soon as an Arabic linguist with a Special Forces group in Afghanistan. Much is said of the Pat Tillmans, but when you think about his talent in academics, it's the same sort of sacrifice. We are privileged to know these people. We are privileged that they are a part of us. But the best example, I think, comes a lot closer to home. It's when Sergeant David Ververka and Dale Kelly were killed in the Mountain Infantry Company. Lessons were made. Key lessons were made, and people grew. The explosively formed penetrators that killed them were the toughest challenge that soldiers in Iraq had. They were the toughest, they were the hardest IED to combat. They pierced any of our armor. They were just the most difficult challenge you can imagine. And when the Mountain Company faced that loss, that grievous loss, their leaders openly faced that challenge. Leaders like Darrell Lyon, who an ROTC faculty member, and a graduate, Paul Bossi, took those lessons to heart, right? They learned it from it, they were open about it, they faced the loss, and everybody from that Mountain Company made that unit better. And when they went back to Afghanistan in a very dangerous mission along the Pakistan border, they brought every single soldier home. And I think that those tragedies that make us better, and the Mountain Company's loss, is such a great example of what these veterans mean to us, what these people who gave their lives for their country mean for us, that they can make us better each and every day. Much is said about veterans keeping us safe, but we don't often recognize the way that they make us better just by having them, and they inspire me every day, and I hope they inspire you. Thank you.
Now we'll have the reading of the 200 known names of fallen UMaine graduates since World War II.
Stewart, Lauren Prescott. Eastman, Tobias Clifford. Beckett, Charles Lewis. Hammond, Seymour Chamberlain. Muzzy, George Aldrich. Dowdy, Joseph Roy. Watson, Paul Erdwin. Keogh, George Frederick. Murphy, Frederick Coleman. Staples, Roscoe Everett. Bradley Jr., James Vinson. Emerson Alberto Charles, Marshall Elliott Eugene, Overlock Fred Vernard, Shaw Linwood Zena, Fogg Donald Herbert, Kelly John Coney, Kalman Lewis, Lane Lois Samuel, Sinclair Charles Arthur, Howard Richard Homer, Dunbar Roger Prince, Feely Howard Thomas, Giroux Louis Winfield, Giroux Melvin Arthur, Harris Carl Frederick, Johnson Thomas Corbett, Albert Ronald Lanier, Burgoyne Raoul Joseph, Fay Gardner Wilcox, Hooper Williams Howard. Thank you.
Minuity Joseph, John Joseph, Perkins Irving Joseph, Peterson Gardner Henry, Proctor Dewing, Roderick Early Houston, Shaw Jr. Howard Earl, Simmons Herbert Carlson, Wood Edward Parsons, Doyle Jr. Edward Holton, Edwards Richard Stephen, Fogg Carlton Thale, Forrestal Howard Warren, Watson Festus George, Craig William Henry, Dow James Frederick, Dyer Jr. Hamilton Higgins, Emery Leonard Hayden, Grant Philip Farnsworth, Groves Stephen William, Hodgson Malvin Foss, Norton Weston Pike, Quint Donald Howard, Sayx Irving Gilbert, Ward William Howard, Washburn Frank Johnson, Cogswell Jr. Fred Melville, Fish Roy Ronald, Grimmer Stewart William, Hallowell Eugene Herbert, Knight Melvin Tabor, Lamigan Edwin James, McKinney Omar Walter. Thank you.
Torrey Donald Ralph, Turner Robert Wesley, White Benjamin Franklin Jr., Agustinelli Kitan Anthony, Comerford Edward Maurice, Earl Vinton Jordan, French Philip Carter, Harrison Frederick Earlmore, Hughes Milo Walton, Knoyer Russell Edward, Larson